They say some houses remember. The walls, the floors, the air itself, they all hold memories just waiting for the right soul to come along and wake them up. And when they do, the house remembers you. It started with a whisper. Evelyn Price wasn't superstitious. She was a researcher, a woman who lived by logic, data, and hard proof. So when she inherited Hillcrest Manor from her late aunt, she didn't see a home, she saw an opportunity. She wanted to document the so-called paranormal. Cameras, sensors, voice recorders, she brought the whole setup. Not to hunt ghosts, but to prove they didn't exist. The manor stood miles from town, hidden behind iron gates that hadn't opened in years. When Evelyn pushed them, the rust screamed a piercing shriek as if the metal itself wanted her to turn back. But she didn't. Inside, the air was heavy and stale. Each step she took echoed for far too long, like the sound had nowhere to go. The house was enormous, yet it felt tight, suffocating, as if the walls were slowly closing in. Her flashlight beam danced across old, cracked portraits of previous owners. Their eyes were faded, but somehow they still seemed to be watching her every move. She just laughed it off. Just shadows, she whispered, setting up her first camera in the grand hallway. The first night was quiet, almost too quiet. The sensors picked up nothing. No voices, no movement, no anomalies. But then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the temperature in the living room plummeted 12 degrees in a matter of seconds. Cameras showed nothing, just an empty, silent hallway. But when she played the footage back, there was a single frame, one frame that wasn't supposed to be there. Woman's reflection in the mirror behind where she was standing, pale dot staring. Evelyn froze the video, zoomed in. The face, it looked just like her aunt, but her aunt had been buried 3 months ago. The next night, she moved her gear and sleeping bag upstairs to the master bedroom. As she sat up, the bed creaked loudly even though she wasn't on it. She glanced at the large, ornate mirror beside her and something felt off. The room and its reflection looked slightly different. The walls were darker, the window curtains drawn tight, and for a fleeting moment she saw a figure sitting on the bed in the reflection right where the real bed was empty. She turned quickly, nothing. No one was there. That's when she heard it. A whisper, faint but clear, right behind her ear. "Why did you come back?" She spun around, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Hello? Who's there?" Only silence answered. But her digital recorder light was blinking. It had captured the voice. With trembling hands, she played it back. It wasn't just one whisper. There were 3 distinct voices overlapping. "Why did you come back? Leave us." "She knows." Evelyn's hand shook as she shut the recorder off. "Audio distortion," she said aloud, trying to force a calm she didn't feel. Just frequency overlap, but in that moment, it felt like the house laughed. Not a loud, echoing laugh. It was subtle, like the air itself was exhaling a deep, guttural chuckle. She felt it vibrate up through the floorboards, a low hum that made her teeth ache. But she stayed. She had to. By day 3, the house had changed. The rooms felt colder, the shadows deeper. Doors she knew she had closed were suddenly standing wide open. And the portraits in the hallway, their eyes had turned. Every single one of them now looked directly at her, no matter where she stood. Unnerved, she covered them all with sheets. But that night, the sheets were gone. The portraits were now on the floor, their painted faces stretched and distorted, as if the oil itself was melting into silent, screaming masks that hadn't been there before. In her journal, Evelyn wrote, "It's just stress. I'm tired. I'm hearing what I expect to hear." But she didn't write down what she was seeing. She couldn't bring herself to admit it. The shadow that followed her from room to room. The sound of footsteps that perfectly matched her own pace, always one step behind. At 2:33 a.m., a motion sensor blared from her monitor. She looked at the screen. The hallway camera was picking up movement. Figure moving slowly, deliberately toward the living room. Thinking someone had broken in, she grabbed her heavy-duty flashlight and ran downstairs. As she entered the hall, the flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died completely. She switched to her phone's light, and there, at the far end of the hall, was the figure. It wasn't moving anymore. It was just standing there, a shape of darkness, blacker than the shadows around it. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice trembling. No answer. She took a hesitant step closer, the air growing colder with every inch. Then the figure turned its head with a slow, mechanical creak, and she saw it had no face. A scream caught in her throat. The figure raised a hand and pointed not at her, but behind her. Evelyn spun around. The large mirror at her back was glowing with a faint, sickly light, as if lit from within. And then something began to step out of it. A hand first, then another, and then her aunt's face emerged twisted, pale, with eyes that bled pure shadow. "You shouldn't have come back," the thing whispered in a voice that was both familiar and monstrous. Evelyn dropped her phone and ran. Up the stairs, down the hall, fumbling for any door, any escape. She burst into a room she didn't recognize, and the door slammed shut behind her, the lock clicking into place. She turned, gasping for breath, and froze. The room was filled with mirrors. Every wall, every corner was a reflective surface. Each one showed her own terrified reflection except for one. One mirror, directly in front of her, was completely empty. She walked toward it, trembling. "Who are you?" she whispered to the empty glass. In response, her reflections in all the other mirrors began to move even though she was standing perfectly still. Each reflection started to smile, slowly, unnaturally. One by one, their mouths opened wider and wider, stretching, cracking, breaking the skin of their faces. Then, in a terrifying, unified chorus, they all whispered, "You woke us." The empty mirror began to ripple like water. A cold gray hand reached out, grabbing her wrist in an iron grip. She screamed and pulled back, but it was impossibly strong, dragging her closer. Her nails clawed at the wooden floor, splinters tearing under her fingers. And then silence. Camera footage recovered the next morning showed Evelyn standing motionless in front of the mirror, her face a blank mask. Her reflection was gone. And then, just before the tape cut to static, a final, faint whisper could be heard. "She's home now." Days later, the local sheriff found the house empty. No Evelyn. No signs of a struggle, but her cameras were still running. Each screen showed an empty, silent hallway except for one. In the upstairs room, one of the mirrors showed a figure standing just behind the glass, watching, breathing, waiting. That footage was never released. The house was sealed off. But locals say on quiet nights, if you drive by Hillcrest Manor, you can still see a light flicker in an upstairs window. And if you look long enough, sometimes the reflection in your rearview mirror doesn't quite match your face anymore. Because some houses don't haunt people, they collect them. And once you enter their memory, you never leave. Will you dare spend one night inside Hillcrest Manor? If you would, then subscribe and keep the lights on. You're going to need them. Thanks for watching.